Shalom, Tel Aviv. Shalom, Israel. And I tell you, that's a beautiful feeling, so thank you very much. I'd like to start with a thank you for the love I've been shown, a thank you from the invite from your government, and the opportunity to come to this beautiful nation and report back to the British public on what I find. I come here as a friend, but I come here to ask lots of questions. Let me start off by putting something to bed. As I come off here earlier, I was confronted by a British Channel 4 journalist who made the accusation that I'm not a journalist. So for you, darling, this first video is just to clear something up for you. Play the journalist video, lads. Aidan.
Shame on you! Shame on you!
AV, play the video, please.
First of all, now that the far left extremist has left the building, let me start off, once they get the video ready, by saying earlier I went for dinner and there were tables of lone soldiers. Can I tell you, first of all, how inspiring that is? It's inspiring to realise that young men are leaving their families from every corner of this globe. They're travelling here. They are travelling here for something far bigger than themselves or their families. Something that unites every single one of you. They're travelling here to defend their people and to defend their land. So, a bit about me. I'm a journalist, an investigative journalist from Great Britain. I first travelled here in 2016 because I thought it would be ignorant of me to talk about issues that I have not experienced and know very little about. So I come here. I met some fabulous people, but we paid some young Arab Muslims to take us to a Fatah-controlled refugee camp in Bethlehem. Now, bearing in mind that I am probably vocally one of the most outspoken people against the Islamic ideology in Europe, I've faced 12 Osman warnings, they're government warnings for threats to life. There are 6 Muslims serving 30 years in prison for plans to murder me. I risked my life to go to a Palestinian Fatah-controlled refugee camp because I wanted to ask questions. When I went there, and I love the argument in the UK, or I love the argument when people confront me who are pro-Palestine, and I asked them, have you ever actually spoke to any 3rd or 4th generation refugees who either live in the state of Israel or live in any of these refugee camps? So I went there to ask questions. And as I walked around the camp, I asked, who's oppressing you? And I got on really well with this gentleman. He was a 4th generation refugee. And his words, never fund free Palestine. The money does not come to us, which surprised me. Okay? And then I asked him, who is oppressing you? I expected him to say the state of Israel. What did he say? The Palestinian Authority. I said, why are the Palestinian Authority oppressing you? He then explained, as he took me round his estate, we had a lady who blew up a bus. He described her as a martyr. We had another man who had gone on a killing spree. And he explained that the Palestinian Authority pay anyone who leaves this camp and kills an Israeli. They get paid money for the rest of their life, which I never knew. I don't think many people in Britain understand this. I don't think the British public understand that our government just recognised a terrorist state that is governed by a Palestinian Authority who pay people to kill Israelis. But Keir Starmer's So, as he explained this to me, I had no knowledge. And then I started looking into the Palestinian Authority. And when I looked into the Palestinian Authority, I found out that we fund them. British taxpayers' money funds the Palestinian Authority. And the gentleman corrected me. So I said to him, if a Muslim leaves this refugee camp and murders a Jew, then they get money for the rest of their life. And he said, murders an Israeli. I said, what do you mean? It doesn't have to be a Jew, it just has to be an Israeli. So that's pay to slay, and that shocked me. And on that trip, I asked lots of questions. I also met a young, beautiful Jewish girl who had been forcefully removed in 2005 from the Gaza Strip. She explained that her family had lived there for generations, and that her family did not want to leave, but they were dragged off of their land by the IDF. I guess at a time when your government was still trying to appease and negotiate with terrorists, thinking that if every Jew was removed from the Gaza Strip and they had the Gaza Strip, it might stop the killing and the bloodshed. I think obviously now Israel and the world, well not the world because Britain don't, but America and Israel at least realise you cannot negotiate and the only language they understand is strength. But on that trip, I asked lots of questions, and I come here to ask questions so that I could talk about these issues back home, so that I could relay a message back home, so that I could discuss these topics. It's exactly the same reason why I'm here now. I come here as a journalist. I hope many of you have watched so far the videos that we've churned out since we've been here. I hope that Channel 4 journalists who confronted me earlier, have you watched the videos? Because you could learn a few things from watching these videos. And as I said, I'm going to play a little video. Now, this video is just for the benefit of those who don't like to accept the fact that we are great journalists.
Tommy, we love you!
I'm here in Rome, the day after an election has sent shockwaves through Europe. I'm in Luton, my hometown. So I'm in Berlin. We're in Germany, and we've come to witness a women's march. We're in Birmingham. If any other journalists who drive up here, are you going to pull them over, ask them who they work for, check their company, tell them you want to see it past? You've been cleared.
Indeed I have.
14 days, no food.
18 altogether.
18 days, no food. In May 2020, a story exploded onto the internet.
Who's the president of the European Union?
Not sure.
Do you know who the leader of the European Union is?
We launched a petition. This is the result. I don't know where to start with it. Look, one of them was coming to give a speech on the topic of free speech.
The easiest way to close down a discussion or debate about anything is to call people racist.
The British public do not trust you anymore.
But while Stephen Yaxley Lennon is many things, a journalist isn't one of them.
So I think now we've established we are journalists. Not only are we journalists, we're far better journalists than the mainstream. Can I just point out to the Channel 4 lady right now? We currently have 55,000 people watching us live. More people will watch our content that we produce than any of the mainstream media. You do not have the monopoly to lie to the public any longer. I feel embarrassed coming here as a British citizen because I know that my government have just betrayed every single one of you. They've betrayed your country and they've betrayed our people. Because if it was put to a public vote, the British public would never vote to recognise a terrorist Palestinian state. For 20 to 30 years, not just in Britain, across Europe, the public have been scared. The Jewish population in Europe are scared. The public have been scared into opening their mouth and telling the truth. The reason why? You come under attack. If you haven't seen, since I've been here, I'm coming under attack from establishment figures, establishment media. The public have been silenced through the accusation of racism or far right, and it has been successful. Fear is paralysing, and the entire British public was paralysed into speaking the truth. What you have witnessed, there's been a mass awakening since October 7th. I'd just like to point out as well, many people talk about October 8th Jews, yeah? There's been a massive awakening, not just in the Jewish community, but in our community. I understand Hamas. On the day after October 7th, I made a video. At this time, I was censored. I didn't have an X account. I was deplatformed off every single social media. I was invisible. I was walking along the beach and I made a video saying, Hamas are ISIS. They are the same group. Hamas's charter says the final day of judgment does not come till not every Zionist is dead. The argument that they keep putting about Zionism, till every Jew is dead. The reason why I understand who Hamas are, I'm born in Luton Town. In my hometown of Luton Town, which is 30 miles north of London. When I was born in 1982, there was one mosque. There's now 45. Al-Mujahideen, white English are a minority in my hometown. I know what it's like to live as a minority. I know what it's like to live with a dominant, hostile, Islamic supremacist community. Al-Mujahideen, who are a world-recognised now prescribed terrorist organisation, their head office was in my hometown, on a road called Biscuit Mill. Omar Bakri, Abu Hamza were all based in my hometown. 60% of the British Muslims in jail for terrorism were ex-members of this organisation. I looked as I stood on the kibbutz 2 days ago, and you can see Gaza Strip, so the community next door. To many, terrorism or jihad is something that's far away. Kids I went to school with have gone to jail for being members of ISIS. Kids I went to school with have died fighting in Syria for ISIS. The problem is not far away from you, but growing up for me, it was never far away from me either. So very early on, I understood who ISIS were. I understood what jihad was. What shocked me after October 7th, it wasn't what Hamas done. I know what they want to do. You know what they want to do. I know that your country is surrounded by jihad. I know that they would love to pillage and rape and murder their way through this beautiful nation. What shocked me was the response across the West. I guess it shocked all of you. By October... It took 50 years for people to start denying the Holocaust. It took days for them to start denying October 7th. Now, as Israel faced the biggest attack, in days they were celebrating in my capital city, in every single Western nation's capital city. I'd say that Israel has lost the propaganda war. Considering people say Israel or Jews are in control of the media, they're not doing a very good job, okay? Because literally the next day we saw in every Western capital city what you witnessed in our capital city, what I witnessed and what the public witnessed was the takeover of our capital city every Saturday for over a year. Hamas supporters, Hezbollah flags, ISIS flags, Hamas flags, slogans, dressed up, terrorist chants. The shocking thing was the government and the police's response, as literally they were given full reign of the capital city and laws were not enforced. We saw Hizb ut-Tahrir, who are now a prescribed terrorist organisation, calling for jihad, calling for Muslim armies. And when they called for Muslim armies and jihad, the Metropolitan Police Force put out a statement saying there are plenty different meanings of jihad. There may be, but not when it's from a terrorist organisation on the streets of London calling for jihad against the Jews. Now, as we witness this, which is why I want to come here today, the vocal minority have been given the voice. They've been supported by the BBC, they've been supported by the educated, they've been supported by politicians, and they've been supported by the media. I want to give you some hope, because I've had hope. I feel like I've been banging my head against the wall for a decade, trying to warn the British public about the dangers of jihad, about the dangers of Islamic supremacy. Something massive has happened in the last 18 months in Great Britain. I don't know if you've been following. I don't know if you've... If you watch British news, you would believe that the British hate the Jews. I wouldn't blame you. Yeah? You would believe that everyone in Britain is against Israel, and you would believe that everyone supports Palestine. That is because of the media portrayal. But 2 years ago we sat down, 15 of us, we had a vision that if you change the culture, you change the politics. Rather than trying to get hundreds of millions of pounds and start a political party, we wanted to give the British community and the British public back something we've lost. Something you have. You have something that brings you together. You have pride in who you are, you have your flag, you're all very patriotic. We lost that. We had lost that. And I'll give you a little explanation. I went to Poland in 2015 to attend their Independence Day. And when I stood there, 250,000 Poles, children on their shoulders, flags, flares, singing, celebrating. I stood at the front and I put my arms out and I felt something. As the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, I felt power. I felt power in them coming together, in the brotherhood, the sisterhood, in all of them understanding. And when I looked at Poland's history, they've always been outnumbered 40-1 in any battle. The biggest uprising with pitchforks to fight the Nazis happened in Warsaw. They lived under communism. They were wiped off the face of a map. They understand what it's like to fight for survival, as many of you do. They understand what it's like. And as I interviewed Polish people, they said, your older generation, they know who they are. Your younger generation, they are lost. And that is basically what's happened in Great Britain. We have been lost. We've lost our identity, we've lost our culture, and we've lost our spirit. And I was jealous. I left Poland jealous. And I'd never experienced that. And then we started with a vision. We got 15, whether you call them influencers, journalists, the people who have been attacked, and we've sat down and said, let's agree on 5 things. Let's not talk about what we disagree with, because we'll disagree on a lot. Let's talk about the fact that British culture is under threat. Free speech is under threat. Sexual exploitation and rape of our daughters from Islamic rape gangs is a risk. LGBTQ+ indoctrination in the education system. So we agreed on these points and said that if we all come together, with a click of a button, we can reach this country, we can reach the population, and we have a greater reach than any of the British media. So we had a vision. The vision was to have demonstrations, have celebrations, and focus on culture and identity, and give the public back a voice. We held our first demonstration. 30,000 people come on the 30th of June. On the 27th of July, I stood in Trafalgar Square in front of 100,000 people, and I felt the same as I felt in Poland. As the hairs on the back of my neck stood up, and as we give people back what they've had taken from them. We've had mass immigration come into our country, we've moved out of our towns and cities, we've cared about ourselves rather than our community, which is why I admire Israel, I admire the lone soldiers, because they know there's something far bigger than them and their family. Well, there's something far bigger than us and our family, which is Great Britain. And I've heard for so long about when the British lion wakes up. And I've been banging my head thinking, when is this lion going to wake up? What is happening? And then, on the 13th of September, I don't know how many of you watched our event on the 13th of September. What I want you to know, and I spoke to a lady as I went to a restaurant the other day, and the lady said that she travelled from the United States of America. She was a Jewish lady. She travelled from the United States of America and flew back to the UK for this event because it was that important to her. Yeah? She flew back and her friends got out the Star of David. There was 2 of them. And as they'd felt alone. They'd felt on their own. And I don't blame them for feeling on their own because you must feel under attack from every angle. Yeah? So they felt on their own. And as they walked through what would be millions of people on the streets of London, everyone was patting them on the back. Everyone was saying, we're with you. And she said that she realised at that point that they're not alone. That there's actually an army of British people who are willing to stand with them. So my message is simple. Do not believe the media. Do not believe Keir Starmer. The British public stand with the British Jews. We are not going to stand by silently and watch as British patriotic Jews are driven from their homeland. We will be standing side by side with them in this fight for their survival and their future in Great Britain. I know many of you would want them to come to Israel. We don't want them to leave Britain. Now, I want to rewind a little bit and tell you a story about a friend of mine called Yisrael Shalom. When I started the English Defence League in 2009, we were quite a boisterous organisation, okay? We were young men full of adrenaline who were not going to back down. We were fed up with seeing our communities raped, fed up with seeing our daughters raped, and we started an organisation where we come together. In 2010, I was contacted by a Jewish gentleman in London who appealed to me for help. He reached out and he said that he'd lost his driving licence. And since he lost his driving licence, he had to walk the streets in Newham, which is a predominantly Muslim community, as a visible Jew. And he started realising that people were spitting at him. They were attacking him. In fact, I'm going to show you now a quick interview that I'd done with Yisrael at the time. And do you know what I said to him? What I said to him is, because his house come under attack, he was attacked violently. And I said, Yisrael, let me bring 50 men. Let me wait in your house with 50 men. And the next time they attack your house, let us be there waiting. Yisrael didn't want that. He didn't want any violence. He was a calm, peaceful man. Let me show you an interview with him quickly now.
I'm now going to show you a video from 6 months ago.
Yeah, just talk me through. Tell me the story.
Okay, well, about 5 years ago, I got rid of my car, and I became more prominent in the streets of Newham, and I started noticing people get out of things as they would pass me, or people were spitting very close to me in the streets. And after about a few months, I realised actually they're spitting at me, and I faced quite a lot of anger. I faced quite a lot of just aggression from various younger Muslims in the community, simply because I was a Jew, or rather a conspicuous Jew in the college. And one time I was cornered in the college. I was shoved into the corner, and I was made to justify the existence of Israel. Well, I've got post-traumatic stress disorder, and I experienced a lot of panic attacks.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah.
You've been living under a barrage of abuse and threats and intimidation for years.
Yes, 5 years now, and you know, it's been coming up for 300 incidents, attacks on me and my home, and it probably wouldn't be so bad if I knew that, you know, maybe the authorities would have my back, but unfortunately they don't. I do think every morning, you know, I'm still here, and I go to bed at night. I live today, you know.
I've seen the image of your property. It's like Fort Knox now, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, my friends that I had to stop my friends coming to the house because I couldn't guarantee their safety. So I never have friends at the house. I always meet my friends outside. I can't have family to live with me because it's too dangerous. I live in...
See, this is 2014 in the Borough of London.
2014, do you know what it's like to see a grown man brought to tears? Do you know how many families I meet that are brought to tears in Luton and towns like that? The reason why I'm showing you these videos, I want you to understand this is real life. This is not me.
When I say in towns and cities like Luton, I'll just give you a bit of background from my hometown. The Luton Islamic Centre, which was the home of the Stockholm bomber, it was the home of the Westminster Bridge terrorist attacker, that used to be the synagogue, okay? There's no Jews left in Luton. Why are there no Jews left in Luton? Again, let me talk to you about my upbringing. I remember when I was about 12 years old, we were little shits, okay? We used to go out and get chases. We'd knock on people's doors, we'd be running around, causing trouble as kids. And I remember there was a Jewish covenant in the countryside in a place called Lily, on the outskirts of Luton, with all the Orthodox Jews. I didn't know anything about Jews. I was 12 years old. I remember I was down there with my friends. We were throwing things and my friend started launching stuff at these men. And he's jumping up and down saying, my mum and dad, my mum would be so proud, my mum would be so proud. And I looked at him, what do you mean your mum would be so proud? My mum would kill me. My mum would kill me if she knew we was out doing this. But we were kids. And he said, they're Jews, they're Jews. My friend was a Muslim, yeah? So that was my first experience understanding your mum would be proud because you're throwing things at someone who's a Jew. That's crazy, yeah? Then I went to high school, where it was a mixed school with many Muslims. I heard so many derogatory comments about Jews. So I experienced this, I listened to this. Then there were Jewish families remembering the Holocaust in Luton. When they're remembering the Holocaust in Luton, at the town hall, mobs of Muslims, part of Al-Mujahideen, the now proscribed terrorist organisation, turned up with megaphones and chased them into the town hall. I can still see it because there was little children with them that were crying. So I had experienced, in my upbringing, growing up, I didn't know any Jews because there's no Jews left. But I knew there was a lot of hatred for Jews coming out of one community that I grew up with. Yeah? So when I started the English Defence League in 2009, when I started, I looked up to lots of people. One of them was Geert Wilders. I listened to Geert Wilders talk about Israel. I knew he lived on a kibbutz here. I listened to his stories. I listened to Robert Spencer. Many of you might know Robert Spencer. I listened to Pamela Geller. Okay? So these people helped shape my early views and my understanding. Not just on Israel. I listened to their views on Israel. I respected them. I listened to their views on Islam, on jihad. I learned a lot. Okay? But those early years shaped my view, and what I saw in Luton, which was clear anti-Jew hatred. And then I met a gentleman like Yisrael. You see what he done there? I'm about to show you now a trailer for the most important documentary that I never made. I'll tell you why I never made it. As a journalist, which I am a journalist, you obviously know there's a lot of criticism of me. There's a lot of accusations against me. I have to be 100% about everything I say. Because if I say something that's proven untrue, my credibility is gone. I fact check everything. I make sure everything I say in my documentaries is bulletproof. I worked, when Yisrael, you see what he predicted there in that interview? He predicted his death. Yisrael is now dead. Driven to death and persecuted to death on the streets of London by hostile, violent Muslims. I'll show you the promo now, which was for a documentary called Shalom. His name was Yisrael Shalom. Let me just show you the promo. And this was 7 or 8 years ago that I made this.
We begin in France, where a surge in anti-Semitic violence and hate speech has members of the Jewish community there fearing for their safety. Many Jews living in France increasingly feel under threat.
Last year, there were more than 500 anti-Semitic offenses here, an increase of around 75%.
Once again, the Jewish community here says it feels like it's under siege.
Tonight, armed guards have been posted at synagogues throughout Germany for the start of Yom Kippur, the Jewish Day of Atonement.
Hate crimes against Jews have increased by nearly a third since 2010, according to the Home Affairs Select Committee report.
Anti-Semitism is once again on the rise
in Paris. There has been a surge in applications for assistance to emigrate to Israel. The agency estimates 5,000 will leave this year, the highest ever.
I've been working
working on a new documentary. It's a new documentary that's going to be coming out soon. It's a documentary that's going to shock this country. I'm going to tell the story of a man who became my friend, a man who was persecuted to death in modern Britain. We have evidence, we have an investigation that shows medical reports, police reports, hundreds of attacks. The man that begged for help from politicians, begged for help from the mayor, all of his cries for help, majority of them ignored. We're going to investigate how widespread this problem is. You're going to witness footage from this man predicting his own death.
Until I get to Israel, but I mean, unfortunately, I come to terms with a little fact a few years ago, about 3.5 years ago, that I'm going to die soon in Newham because I'm a Jew. I had to do that in order to be able to live.
It's not fair.
Absolutely true, and you just can't believe that it's happening, you know. And what you've been through, it's just unbelievable, you know. And I get angry because they took him from us. I feel like they took him.
Yisrael Shalom wanted his story to be told. His family wants his story to be told. I'm going to make sure the world knows the story of Yisrael Shalom.
For me, this is a very difficult conversation because I have failed Yisrael Shalom. I failed him because when he died, I got a phone call off his niece. I'd never met her. She said, "I've been told to contact you." She said, Yisrael's dead, but we have a note that says, upon his death, we need to contact Tommy Robinson and give him the keys to our house. So I took a camera and I went to his house, and she said, he said, "You'll know what to do." So I started filming as I walked into his house, where he had bulletproof vests. He used to wear a bulletproof vest to walk the streets of Newham. And then in his house, I found paperwork. He'd wrote to the Queen. He'd wrote to the Mayor of London. He'd wrote and begged everyone for help in dealing with the violence and attacks that he was facing as a Jew in our capital city of London. Do you know what the advice was back in some of the letters? The advice was move to a Jewish area. That's the advice. Imagine telling a black person to move to a black area if they were facing racism. But that advice to Yisrael Shalom was to move to a Jewish area. Now, why do I say I failed him? You see some of the organisations that are condemning me right now. That was 7 years ago I made that. I first sat down with Yisrael in 2010 when he called out for help. I first sat down and videoed that interview in 2014. That was before I was doing my journalism. Now, as I was making that documentary, I had the paperwork, the records. Yisrael was raped. He was taken off the streets. This sounds insane, no? He was taken off the streets and raped. And then I wondered how many more Yisrael Shaloms there are. How many more people are being targeted on their own in communities when they're living within a Muslim community? And then I found the story of a Jew in Paris, where 28 people were convicted for kidnapping him. They had him for 20 days. They tortured him and they dumped his body and he died in Paris. So as I started looking into this problem and attempting to tell the story, one of the organisations which is condemning me right now for my interest in Israel, or whether I'm a friend to the Jews, the 2 members of staff I had working for me, and I've done a documentary on this. I've exposed an organisation called Hope Not Hate. I've exposed them already. They paid my 2 employees who worked for me, who had every bit of documentation and evidence to do with this case, took that documentation and they didn't have it anymore. So my attempt to tell this story, and when I say my attempt to tell this story, for me to make a film and quote and say what's happened, I need the evidence. I literally need to show everyone every bit of paper along the way, because I know I'll get accusations of lies and smears, and if I get caught once on getting something wrong, it will discredit any future documentaries or work I'm doing. So I had to make a decision to fail that gentleman, to shelve that programme and shelve that show. Obviously, I made a documentary called Panodrama, where I exposed and showed. If any of you want to watch these films, you can watch them at trfilms.co.uk. But I showed that government organisations were paying my old 2 employees to discredit and prevent me showing the world the story of Yisrael Shalom. I failed him, I wish I didn't, but look how long ago that was. You saw what happened October 7th. It's been happening for years. This anti-Jew hatred is nothing new. It's nothing new at all. It's been happening for years, but I wanted to tell the story of Yisrael Shalom. I've never been able to do it in a doc. Do you know how much grief I got? Do you know how much grief I get for standing with Israel? Do you know how much grief I got from the far right? I get called far right, but from the actual far right, because one of the first documentaries I was making was called Shalom. I got uncontrollable assaults or attacks as I'm receiving still now. I'm being called a traitor right now because I'm stood here. Why am I stood here? I'm stood here because it's the right thing to do. Not because there's any benefit. I don't get benefit. I'm stood here because I've been to this country I come to this country in 2016. Do you know what? You do it a lot better than we do. As I was driving, I went to Bethlehem, I went to the Fatah-controlled refugee camp. On my way back, as we were driving, there was about 1,000 young Arab Muslim men, and they were racing donkeys. I said, stop the car, stop the car. And I had an I Love Israel t-shirt on. And I guess I'm a bit provocative at times. I thought I'm gonna walk over there and they're gonna go mad. Yeah, so I walked over with the camera. No one batted an eyelid. No one cared. And as I walked over there, I talked to them all. And Donald Trump had just been elected. In this election in 2016, people hated him. They still hated him. A lot of people hated him. And I asked the Arab Muslims, what do you think of Donald Trump? And they said, strong man, yes. I was like, they all liked him. And as I was there, I looked and there was a Jewish family having a picnic on the floor. Brian, you're nodding your head because you were there. Yeah? And I thank Brian and I thank Kay Wilson, Tal, and I thank them for introducing. I had a fabulous time with you. I found out a lot. But as this was happening, I saw a Jewish family having a picnic with their kippas on. And I looked and thought, you couldn't do that in London. You couldn't have 1,000 young Arab Muslim men, Pakistanis, and a Jewish family who are visible as Jews having a picnic, and no one batting an eyelid. And then I went and approached Muslims, the 2 million of them who live in the state of Israel, and every one of them I asked, what's it like? I was on the Golan Heights, wasn't we? I was on the Golan Heights, and I said to some Muslim lad, because I was inquisitive, asking questions, I said, what's it like living in Israel? And he looked at me like an idiot. He went, that's great. I said, but what's it like? Are you discriminated against? And the bombs were going off in Syria at the time. And he looked at me and said, I pray 5 times a day. He said, you think I want to live over there? And he pointed. So I brought these messages back to tell these stories as well, which is what we're doing now with our journalism here. But as I go through this, as I've said, there is a mass awakening happening. Why am I hated as well? Why are the I'm not even giving them the credit and name in their name, but why are establishment organisations who are in bed with the Labour Party, why are they attacking me? Why have I faced so much criticism since the start of my activism? I started my activism in 2009. I formed an organisation called the English Defence League. The English Defence League had a Hindu division, a Jewish division, a lesbian and gay division. At every single demonstration we held, a non-white person spoke and a gay person spoke. And the non-white person spoke and a gay person spoke to let the far right know, to let the Nazis know, this is not a movement for you. I'm from a town called Luton Town, one of the most diverse towns in Europe. If you line up my best friends and the people I love, the majority of them are not white. Okay, so the accusation goes nowhere, it's pretty boring. But why did we face such an attack? Because I started talking about issues that our government have hid, They've conspired to hide. There's been a conspiracy of silence across our country. How many of you know about the grooming gangs of England? Let's call them what they are. It's a rape jihad being committed against people in Britain by members of the Islamic community. Again, I'm going to tell you, of course not all Muslims. Yeah? I've got Muslim friends who would hate them. I've got Muslim friends who would want to attack them. But the reality is there's a massive problem in their communities, and I started talking about it, so I faced relentless attack from the media, smears, lies. Say it.
Yeah, say it. It's Islamic.
They are Islamic. I always speak the truth. I don't mix my words. They are Islamic rape gangs, and Muslims make up 5% of the UK population, but 90% of the convictions of men who rape children in gangs are Muslim men. 30% of them call Muhammad. Now, this conversation is difficult for some. No, that's a fact. It's a fact. It's a fact. Now, you're not allowed to ask the question, why? If you ask the question, okay, why aren't the Hindus raping? Why aren't the Jews raping? Why aren't the Sikhs raping? Why is it the Muslim community who are raping their way through every country in Europe, not just Britain? Why is it? If you ask that question, you're an Islamophobe, you're an extremist, you're racist, you're far right. But do you know how frustrating it is? I'm standing in now in the last 2 years. I say there's been a mass awakening. Every time I get knocked down, I feel like I get picked up. 2 years ago, Elon Musk picked me up. I watched after October 7th, and do you know how frustrated I was watching Hamas take over my capital city? Do you know how frustrated I was, the voice that they were given? And then I was frustrated at the police's inability. And it was Armistice Day, which was our Remembrance Day, a sacred day for us. We've watched them desecrate our war memorials week in, week out. We've seen politicians do nothing about it. I'm in Spain, and I'm pretty defeated at that time. I'm invisible. I have no social media. Do you know how frustrating it is when you're censored, you're deleted, and you're doing the most important work you've ever done in your life, yeah? Now, the most important work I've ever done is making a documentary series called The Rape of Britain, which is a 5-part series, which tells the stories of the survivors of these rape gangs. If you haven't watched that documentary series, you really need to. It's a fascinating watch, it's a great watch. And the purpose of me doing it was to, if these men are not going to get charged, I'll give you a fact. Like the city of Telford, I spent 12 to 18 months in Telford with my team. Where's Dave? I've got a friend here called Dave, Angus McNugget, who done some incredible work. And if I'm honest, I get the credit, but there's a whole team that work with me. And we spent 12 to 18 months, and we sat girls down. And we sat them down for 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes 2 times, sometimes 3 times. And we sat and listened to their stories. And then we built a database. So we got all these girls and we built a database of names. And when the Muslim men were named by 3 different girls who did not know each other, we went after those men. And I thought, right, I'm going to make sure the whole world knows who you are. And the police identified 200 rapists in the town of Telford. Do you know how many they prosecuted? They prosecuted 11. That means 189 men that the police know raped have never faced prosecution. Do you know how many victims there were just in the town of Telford? 1,000. 5 of them have been murdered. 5 of them are dead. This isn't a small town that no one's heard of. Telford. Do you know what the Muslim population is of Telford? 1.7%. There's only 3,500 Muslims. So you get the 3,500 Muslims, get rid of the women, get rid of the under-16s, there's 1,000 men. So out of the 1,000 men, the police identified 200 of them. That's 20% of the population. We identified 254. An independent inquiry identified over 300. That means that 20 to 30% of the men in that community were raping our kids. That's in a small town. I bet you've all heard of Rotherham, haven't you? Everyone's heard of Rotherham. There's only a 3.7% Muslim population in Rotherham. There's none there. 1,400 children raped in a 16-year period. There's no Muslims there. What do you think it's like in Luton with a 50% Pakistani Muslim population? What do you think it's like in Birmingham that's now a Jew-free zone where Jewish football fans are not allowed to go? Yeah, we'll get onto that, But let me play you now. If you haven't seen the documentary series, The Rape of Britain, it's the best work I've done, it's the most important work I've done. I'll show you a quick promo for that series now.
scared, Tommy. They're not only scared, they're petrified for their children.
Wrong one, lads.
I really don't feel safe for my kids or for my future.
Wrong one.
Well, a lot of them are
Cut
afraid.
it.
A lot of, like, I know.
That's the wrong. It's the other video. That's the Irish one. That's another great documentary. We'll get on to that. Can you play the other one, lads? There's only one other video. When a man comes around is. Guess they're switching it over. But until they get the film ready, this was the most important work I've ever done. This is the reason I'm censored. This is the reason I'm deleted. This is the reason I face attack and relentless attack from the government. What has come out in every single independent inquiry is that the police knew it was happening, the government knew it was happening, but they all hid it. Why did they hide it? Because none of them wanted to be called a racist. That is the power of political correctness. Political correctness allowed a generation of our daughters to be raped. Political correctness and appeasement has just allowed the British government to recognise a terrorist state. It is the money from Qatar, it's the money from Iran, we have proxy armies, but the Jewish community now, do you know, in 2013, as I said, I'm from the town of Luton. In 2013, I sat down and I looked at the government projected growth forecast for the communities in Luton. Now, the Pakistani and Bangladeshi community wards were going to increase, this is by 2030, so in a 17-year period, they were going to increase by 70 to 77%. The white and black community by 1.2 to 1.4%. So the Labour Party know, and the Jewish community in London are now realising what I realised back then. We're irrelevant. We don't matter. White English in Luton, working class Luton, we don't matter. We don't gain them power. They get power through the local Islamic community. The local council and mosques, all the mosques come together under one voting block. That is how they get power. So 300,000 Jews in Britain, or the 5 or 6 million Muslims, the Labour Party are going to appease and surrender because all they actually care about is power. In our last election, 5 independent pro-Hamas politicians were elected. Okay, as our whole last election was about Gaza. Our children are being raped in every town and city. There wasn't one mention of it. Nothing about the British, nothing about the working class, nothing really about the economy. It was all about Gaza. That is the power that they swayed already in Great Britain. Now, when the Labour Party lost a percentage of the Muslim vote that went to the independents, Keir Starmer's just tried to win that percentage back by recognising a Palestinian state. Unfortunately, Jews are realising what we realise. We're irrelevant, you're irrelevant to the Labour Party. Let's see, have we got that next promo ready?
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you. I will look for you. I will find you.
There's a man going round taking names, and he decides who to free and who to blame. Everybody won't be treated all the same. There'll be a golden ladder reaching down when the man comes around. Hear the trumpets, hear the pipers, 100 million angels singing. Multitudes are marching to the big kettle drum. Voices calling, voices crying. Some are born and some are dying. It's Alpha and Omega's kingdom come.
Listen, simple question then, Dave. Did you rape her after Ahmed Nawaz raped her?
Over 200 men's names were identified by your police investigation, but only 11 were charged. Why is that? I've got to put some allegations to you. You've been raping young girls in restaurants, but get the fuck out of here. Why would I have young girls named you as raping young children? I have multiple young girls, school children on camera. I have multiple young girls who allege that you're involved in raping them and prostituting them.
We have serious allegations from children who say that you were involved in the rape and prostitution of them, that you were a kingpin having them trafficked.
bet you didn't see me, did you? I've got some questions to ask you about allegations of child rape. You raped a 12-year-old girl, you took her virginity in the house next door to a mosque in Telford.
Why would 3 individual girls who do not know each other all be telling me and giving me statements that you have been involved in their grooming, in their trafficking and in their prostitution?
Well, can we talk? I've got some questions. We have accusations that you trafficked young children. You trafficked young children, you were the kingpin, you chose who they were raped by. You prostituted them. She fought you whilst you dragged her knickers off her when she was 12 years old in the house next door to the mosque match.
Look at these guys just making...
What were you doing hanging around with 13-year-old school children? You put on your car bonnet and you raced off because you were angry because you had been sleeping with your best friend Imran's underage girlfriend. Men in this town, Pakistani men in this town got away with destroying young girls' lives. Now, you're famous. Everyone's going to know who you are.
When a man comes around.
That series is on one town. Those gangs are operating in every single town in Britain. People think about the crimes, no one thinks about the knock-on effect 10 years, 20 years later to the victims. I guess everything Israel's just been through. I hate to think of what the suffering that's going to go on for generations from those same attacks. These girls, 10 years later, 15 years later, hooked on drugs, suicidal, killing themselves, all of these effects. Do you know when we made this documentary series? They petrol bombed my car, they rang up and threatened to rape my daughters, they targeted my mum's house. Why has it took us to make these documentaries? Where are the mainstream media in going after these gangs? We are literally a handful, our team is a handful of people who have made these documentary series. I'm not just saying it, if you watch our documentaries, they're second to none. Yeah? We do proper investigative work. You will see a documentary come out of this trip to Israel. And we were including it all the smears and lies that are being told about us by the mainstream media. But let me tell you where we're at as a country and what's happening in Great Britain, which I'm usually, everything I talk about is pretty depressing. It's usually very negative. But as I said, something huge is happening. Something that I believe currently will be looked upon as a cultural revolution in Great Britain. A time when the silent majority said they will be silent no more. What you saw on September 13th was millions of British patriots. And when I say millions of British patriots, you know, I walked through the market in Jerusalem and I was followed by young Jews. And do you know what they were chanting? God save the King. They were singing the British national anthem, okay? British patriots. So when I say British patriots, I'm not talking about certain religions. We had a vision of uniting the kingdom. And do you know what the most beneficial moment for me was as I stood at Trafalgar Square and looked at the diversity of the crowd? I knew that the media had lost. No one's listening to them anymore. The smears are far right and racist. Every community has come together under our banner. Every community who loves Great Britain is welcome at our events. When my mum's Irish, okay? She's 4'11". Mum, if you're watching this, I love you. Okay? Dad, I love you too. Kids, I love you. But my mum's 4'11", a mad little paddy, okay? Do not upset an Irish woman, yeah? When I saw the migration crisis hitting Ireland, and this was at a time, it was, as I said, I was censored, I was deplatformed, I was in Spain, and I watched it, and I was inspired by the Irish. So I jumped on a plane. Why was I inspired by the Irish? Because Irish mothers were leading the revolt and the rebellion in the Republic of Ireland against mass immigration. And as I said, do not mess with an Irish mother. Now, I knew that. So I thought I'd better get over there and document for a documentary. I'll show you the promo and I'll talk more about the work and why it's relevant. Let me just show you this promo for our documentary in Ireland. Plantation 2, Rise of the Celts.
They're scared, Tommy. They're not only scared, they're petrified for their children.
So I really don't feel safe for my kids or for my future.
Well, a lot of them are afraid. I know women that can't even go to work anymore, that won't walk because it's too fearful. And that's a sad reality of Ireland today.
Yeah, I was attacked last year.
You was?
I was, in town.
I have 2 rapes by males, one in an open pub and one in this car park.
Another one. They're literally grabbing you on the street. If they look at you and they like you, they're having you.
Like all the attacks I know that have happened to friends of mine in town, nobody has been arrested.
Why did you think it acceptable that you wanted to rape a 14-year-old child?
I had been sexually assaulted while I was completely out cold. It just terrified me and it traumatised me. Like, I have PTSD, I have to deal with that. What are you saying to me, my sister? What did you say to her?
Where's all the women and children? Where's the old men that are suddenly arrived in our village?
There's millions of men coming in. Where are all the women?
I live here. I want to know where you came from and why you are here.
If it keeps going on the way it is, our town won't be recognisable.
It's gonna be your kids next. It's gonna be your mother next. It's gonna be your niece next. And you gotta allow this shit.
We're not going to sit back and allow this. This is our children's future. We're fighting for it.
All for one and Ireland. Ireland for the Irish.
This is my home. This is my country. This is my culture. And I won't sit back and say wiped it.
Let me tell you why this is relevant. I went to Republic of Ireland and I knew. I wore a covert camera, my button was a camera. And I went into the cities and towns that have been flooded with mass migration from Islamic nations, where the hotels, for example, Killarney, one of the most beautiful places. If you travel from Canada or America to the Republic of Ireland, you go to Killarney. And they filled every hotel with Somalians, with Iraqis, with Syrians. So I went onto the streets and I wore a hidden camera. And I went up to women. I said, excuse me, I'm from England. Can I just ask you, what's it like here now compared to 2 years ago? And the women would say, we can't, you'll see it all on the documentary, we can't walk the streets. And one woman says, I work there, I live there, but my husband has to come here to pick me up, to walk me to there, because we're getting attacked, we're getting sexually assaulted. So I say, okay, I'm a journalist from the UK, let me just get my camera. And I say, come over here. No, I can't say that on camera. And literally every woman I approached told the truth when they didn't know they were being recorded. And when I said, let me get a camera, they shit themselves, yeah? And then they backed down and said, we can't say that on camera. So I covertly recorded them in order for the public to be aware, this is how the women in Ireland feel. But they're too scared to tell the truth, yeah? Now what's changed in the last 20 months or 24 months in Great Britain? Because it was the same in Great Britain. You wouldn't have got women telling the truth. Now, women are outside every migrant hotel across our country and they're screaming the truth. They're no longer afraid of telling the truth. There is an army of mothers in Great Britain who have, I don't know if you've seen the Pink Ladies, yeah? This is it was easy to categorise us when we were organising demonstrations, probably because of the way I talk, the way I walk, because of my background and my education. It was easy to pigeonhole us. They can't pigeonhole us anymore, okay? It's mainstream. The British are awake, and what I want you to know as Israelis, and especially as Jews, when we say never again, when I say never again, I mean never again. And I'm not going to stand there, whether you were Jewish or whether you were Hindu. When the Hindus come under attack in Leicester, the first thing I've done was contact the Hindu community and say, we're with you. We're with you. We're not going to stand by. And that wasn't because the Indian government were paying me any money, okay? The same point, I don't get £7,000 a tweet. I wish I did, right? I wish I did. I'd probably be like millions, yeah? But as I said, why do I come here? Why do I speak out? It's the right thing to do. Who are our allies? Our allies are those who defend Western civilization. Israel is the only country where Jews, Muslims and Christians are free to practice their religion. We hear the lie. There is a propaganda war going on that you're losing, okay? Your government are losing it, the Jews are losing it. It's funded by Qatar. Do you know Qatar used to, the way that Qatar used to, they spent nearly £1 billion radicalising Muslims in Europe. They have funded nearly £1 billion. They give home to the Muslim Brotherhood, they give home to Hamas. But the way they used to work is they used to work through dawah centres. They used to work through funding madrasas and funding mosques. Now, there's a new war. That's not how they reach the public. They reach the public with influencers. The conversions, whether it be the conversion of Andrew Tate or the conversion of Sneeko. What's his name? The Jew said steroid did. Dan Bizajan, is it? What's his name? Dan Bazarian. Okay. There's a picture of him on his social media reading the Quran. Right? Does anyone actually think he's reading the Quran? He probably got £1 million for that post. Yeah. The point is that they have targeted influencers to influence them with propaganda. I know there's not a genocide. I know this is not an apartheid state. I know that Muslims in this country, the problem is, many of the public don't. And if you buy your media from the BBC and you listen to Channel 4 who are here today, then you're going to buy into the propaganda that just once you tell a lie 1,000 times, it becomes the truth. They keep just saying genocide, 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 genocide. What genocide? What genocide? So, as I said, I come here. I'll open up for a Q&A. I think someone's going to come up. But the message I wanted to bring was, Britain is awake. There is a mass awakening happening. There's an uprising happening. The silent majority will be silent no more. We organised an organisation called Unite the Kingdom. Our plan was to unite the kingdom. We had a plan 2 years ago. I think when you look at September 13th, we are doing pretty well, okay? Now, I don't want to upset people by hearing this, but everything that's happened so far had to happen, okay? It had to happen in order to wake people up. That doesn't mean I hate what's happened on October 7th. I watched the video, it broke my heart this week. But the public needed to see the response of governments. We all needed to watch what happened. Every one of us, I had to go to prison. I went to prison last year. I got an 18-month sentence for making a film. That had to happen. Lucy Connolly, a British mother, was locked up for 31 months for a tweet. That had to happen. We needed Keir Starmer in power so that people could see what happens under a Labour government. We needed to see the hatred. Why did we need to see it? Because we need the public to be awake. We need them to see it with their own eyes. So as I said, something huge is happening. We're going to hold our next event. Our next event is not just called Unite the Kingdom, it's called Unite the West. Why is it Unite the Kingdom? And I think your government, in what they're doing, at our last event, we reached out to all the populist parties of Europe and invited them in. Why did we invite them in? People come from all over the world. Why did we invite them in? It's not a British problem. It's not an Israeli problem. It's not a European problem. It's all of our problems, okay? And we are stronger working together. Anyone who defends Western civilization, free speech, equality, democracy, liberty, we need to unite together in the face of jihad. Again, Israel, I've absolutely been shown some love. I'm very grateful to be here. I look forward to my journalism, first and foremost. People say about politics. I don't want to be involved in politics. I like waking people up. I like making people think. One thing I will say is, you know the people who are against us? Many people in this room may have been against me at some time. My DMs are full of people apologising to me, saying, I used to hate you. What we can't do, and I did it for a little while, is I was bitter when people who were opposed to me started saying the same thing as me. But then I realised that this is what we've wanted. We've wanted people to wake up. So to those groups and organisations, and maybe even some Jewish people who are criticising me now, at some point you will wake up. And our arms are open. We don't oppose you. We're not your enemy.
Thank you very much, Tommy.
Thank you.